Everybody, welcome back to the Wildcard Podcast. Well, G, group stage is over for some, but continuing for others, maybe mercifully for some, and happy times for others. We'll talk about the art of the group stage, what goes into the format of a group stage. And then it's time to go back to single elimination mode, G, preview and predictions. What was your thoughts on a crazy week 5, but a more similar to week 4 results type thing?
I mean, yeah, um, wasn't really. Some of it was mundane, some of it was kind of all over the place, and I mean, some matches kind of ended before they even started, really. Um, I don't know if this was as tension filled as last year's week 5, but I think in some aspects it still delivered on the drama. But we'll break that down here and who advanced out of the groups and what the round 12 matchups will be looking like. But KT, I mean, we'll start with you. Which one do you want to start with here?
Well, we'll start with probably the more interesting game, Nam and Brock. Well, see, we had both talked about in the podcast that Brock needed at least a 5-1. He did it. He got the 5-1, but I don't really know how much of a 5-1 that was because you look at Nam, I remember doing the game and, oh yeah, I'm just going to go back to 20 cards. And I asked him, what was that about? Well, I just want to make sure for next week I'm prepared, so I just went full experimental mode. Well, yeah, well, when you do that, you're not going to push the limits. And we how many times have we seen Charles Sanford do that? He pulled a Charles Sanford and he gave Brock basically a really good chance to boost units, and Brock did everything he could. He needed to get a 5-1 at minimum, and he got the 5-1. For Nam, I'm not concerned. He already had the 6 points at the end of the day moving forward. I guess he figured, you know what? Let's just try to prepare for whoever's next. Brock needed the win, but he needs some help. Thoughts on this one? It's really hard to say. I just feel like the first time they played, Brock schooled him for sure. This one, it just felt different. It was more of a Nam just was experimenting and let's get through the motions. Is that how you saw it?
I have, but I've also been very vocal on I don't like the idea of experimenting like in the late season, because there's a lot of times where it could very easily backfire. And I mean, looking at this round of 12, we will get to it in a second, but there is a very real potential possibility that the fact he lost his 5-1 could very well backfire in Nom's face. Because I mean, he technically Nom still had stuff to fight for. He could have fought for the top of Group B, so he still had that up for grabs, but a 5-1 loss there puts him at 6 points, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And I'm not going to necessarily say where he ends up, but it left the door open for someone to swoop in and take the top spot of the group, pretty much.
Remember, the 8th seed would be the Group B. We'll talk about that a little later. For Brock, so now at this rate, the funny thing, we talked about this one, the next game was Group B, so we would know that night what have happened. And basically, Brock needed a 5-1 from a certain somebody, and it was Steven Chomik. Well, this game was over. Unfortunately, had to break out the garbage time. You know how that is. Garbage time mode. Chomik just had his number, had Steven's number. I mean, he hadn't done split ammo the entire tournament, basically and he used his split ammo on Steven, and it's game over. And that style, we talk about split ammo. There's only a couple guys that do it, right? Chomik's one of the best. Allen for sure. Eli, a couple people do it, but Chomik's one of the best at crafting it. Of course, with Allen and Eli as the three main culprits. Steven, I think, just unfortunately, the old leprechaun, the pot at the end of the rainbow, it ran out. He had a great Super League in terms of adjusting to everyone's styles, but to lose this one 4-2, those last two wins are kind of more just fluff, right? It came down to the game was already over after 4. I think Chalmers said that's enough, and he would ultimately pass Nam in points and move into that 8th seed. For Steven, I guess I'll say this much: I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do for next year, but I think you can agree with me here, G. A lot of stuff to clean up, and the biggest thing he needs to clean up is you can't be table talking or chalking straight. These guys out here in D1 they don't care, right? And we talked about the pro player mindset. It's been a big talking point in this show. They just don't care, right? You look at Nam when he played Nam, he tried talking. He tried talking against Ghost. It worked to Ghost. I'll give him credit. It worked against Ghost, but didn't work really against Brock. He choked the 3-1, and then ever since then, he got schooled 5-1 and basically 4-0 until the last two games. It didn't matter. He just didn't look the same after that Brock loss. Thoughts on Steven? You've known him more than me in terms of TMD too. And Chomik moving in, sweeping that last spot over for the 8 seed.
I mean, honestly, he didn't really look the same after the bye because I did say going into Super League, in terms of the D2 field of people who could have won it and get this spot. Steven was someone I was a little bit more on the hesitant side of whether or not he could make it out of the group, but I was liking what I saw from him from the first 2 weeks and thought he was putting himself in a good chance to do it, but just was not really able to bring it in these final two matches, and unfortunately goes out in the groups. But overall, I think it's a decent impression. I think there's stuff he did well, and I think there's stuff he knows he needs to improve on going into next season. But gives a little preview of what we could expect Steven to do going into the 2025 season as a D1 player. And he entered as a 16th seed, and he did not finish 16th. So honestly, when you really think about it, I guess that's a win in some sort of way. But Steven out of the groups, unfortunate end for him. But I think based off how he was talking after the game, he had a good time and was thankful to have the opportunity.
Yeah, I definitely think Steven will be in a good spot come next year. He'll understand a little bit. He'll be the only D2 promoter, correct, G, to say that. He'll have a little bit of a taste of what's the rest. As of now, of course, there are some things we are looking at behind the scenes. But as of now, he's the only guy that has a little taste of it. So we'll see what the foreshadow will be come February. Well, gee, I think it's time for I know we haven't broke the siren. I'm not going to do it here because I want to have a more serious talk with this game because I just want to say to the viewers, if you're listening to this show, you can say, well, okay, Eli wasn't here. Okay, but to me, we got to take accountability. What happened to DJ Kurz the last two? I'm not going to say anything bad. He did fine against JT. No problem, right? He did fine. But the last 3 weeks he played, unacceptable, right? It's not good. It's not a good look on the sport when you go 2-4 and then you go to their last 17 games, a whopping, what is this, 1-17? No,
Yep.
double sweep. It's just not good. We have to be better in terms of understand the criteria. Sure, it's going to be fixed next year. We're going to have more things to add to the criteria, but we have to take this one on the chin and say, hey, it doesn't matter if it's not our fault. We messed up in some sort of way. Even if it's not our fault, we need to take accountability and say, what can we improve? Whether it be format, whether it be, do we need to look at how tiebreakers are done? Because really, DJ got in off of tiebreakers of a common bubble opponent, and that usually on a good year would work, but it was not like any other year. We need to take it on the chin. Congratulations to Toaster guy. He needed a win, realistically, to get in. He got the win, but I'm gonna be honest with you, Jay. If you look at everything that happened, you look at Sanford, you look at Toaster guy, JT, and Lane. They all beat him pretty easily. In fact, JT, the guy that won the group, right? Who's on a bye? Ghost is on a bye in Group B, but he also, we'll talk about him a little later. DJ gave JT the hardest threat, and ever since then, he just after the bye, it was an epic collapse. Your thoughts on just the commissioner's side and what you saw? Obviously, you were there for the original 6-0, the first ever one. I was there for the second one. That just hurt my heart. What do you think? What do you think about this one, G? This is a tough one to talk about for sure.
I'm gonna be honest. I mean, obviously we're taking accountability on this because I mean this was a. I'm just gonna be blunt. This was a complete screw up. In terms of the placement here, in terms of the Super League field, I think we definitely did without doubt screw up one of the spots, which it kind of sucks to say that, but I really don't know how you hide away from that. I personally don't think we are going to see a worse postseason performance like this one in a very, very long time. I mean, 0-4, 0 points, and then three wins, 21 losses, -18 game differential. I mean, these are numbers that not even close. No one even came close to these numbers last year. I'm pretty sure everyone last year had at least 2 points, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. Yep.
And I mean, if we exclude DJ from this, that's technically stayed true this year. But I mean, this was a complete disaster. And I mean, especially with how this year we have 3 people making it out per group. I mean, it's kind of just dead weight at that point where one of the guys is just kind of floating there and just kind of being like a free punching bag in a way. And I mean, it was not great. Really, really bad postseason in general. And I mean, this was someone who was on the bubble as well, so it was kind of an exposure, and also just kind of went to show that we made an incorrect decision on this one, incorrect judgment, which really sucks because with how these playoffs go, it's important you have to try to get the best 16 in there, and I think especially with this performance, I don't think we got the best, or I guess this season 15. Um,
15, yeah.
but I'm still gonna give credit to the D2 champion though. I'll put same 16, but in this case, the best 15 D1 players, I don't think we got the best 15 D1 players, and that kind of sucks. And honestly, to the people outside the bubble, it's like a massive apologies because I mean, there was definitely potentially someone out there who didn't bake the field or got close that maybe could have done something more than negative 18 game differential and just did not get the opportunity to do it. And that's kind of the thing that sort of sucks with this format because if you get something wrong, there's no real way to remedy it. But yeah, 6-0. Curtis owns the two 6-0s in history and on the wrong side of it. And I mean, overall, just a complete disaster of a postseason for DJ. Beyond eliminated. He is
Ugh.
eradicated from Super League pretty much this season. So that's going to be a tough one to bounce back from next season. We'll see what he does, but I mean, this is going to be a very, very long off season of thinking for DJ.
Well, I know someone brought up a good point behind the scenes. Katie, you really think it was acceptable to a guy with a losing record? Because he technically did have a losing. It's something we're going to look into. We shouldn't be. We should have looked more into that. There's no doubt. If you have a losing record, maybe there's a reason why. Now, of course, we gave him a free pass because he didn't enter tournament 4 and he had all those head-to-head. But it's no excuse. We need to look in to say maybe there needs to be a threshold. If you have a losing record, maybe you had a losing record for a reason. And I do want to also say, I agree with everything he said. We got to do better. It doesn't matter if it's the littlest thing. We have to have the 16 best players move forward, and we messed up, right? Steven doesn't count. In my opinion, he did everything he could. He got 2 points. That was the limit. Fine. He had to adapt to every new style. I don't think we can really put too much harsh pressure. If he had 0 points, I'm not going to be mad because he had to go on the fly and try to figure everyone out. TJ's been here around the block. I'm not going to say, okay, he's a master, right? It's his first time. Yes, I appreciate him stepping in those tough circumstances, but it needs to be reevaluated where he is. Of course, we like to think he stays in the master class. It's still TBD. But we have to reevaluate after something like this. We got to take a hard look as a commission team and say, okay, where we went wrong, what can we do better? And not only can we change the formatting of how we place people into the top 15 or 16 or whatever the format will be next year on a committee side, but what can we do with the actual format? Maybe there's something there that we got to prevent this, or maybe this was just a fluke. Let's hope it is, because I'm gonna real. It's not just the 6-0s. We had a lot of 5-1s this year. Last year we had what, 2 maybe, and 1 didn't even count. So realistically, we've had more 5-1s and 6-0s, and even a lot of 4-0s, and then the last 2 games didn't mean anything. A lot this year. I wonder if it's just a disparity, but that's all I'm going to say on it. We'll talk about it more probably in the second topic for sure when we talk about the art of the group stage. But let's go to the last game. This was the game that was supposed to come down to the old KTG moment from last year. All right, so Lane just needed a tie, and Sanford needed to win the game. But from what I understand, I was talking to Short last night. It's been the story for Lane in Super League. Did not get the card luck the first 3 games. In fact, really did well in Game 3 to just fight it off. And unfortunately, Game 5, he just didn't have the hand. And the last game, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It's Sanford. He doesn't care after that. So Sanford got the job done, but it's a tough one for Lane, right? We talked about him just sweeping, so he doesn't make it. However, at the same time, and I talked to Lane personally this morning, the fact that he was supposed to be a guy that finished 50th, a lot of people had him way back there. He was in thoughts of relegation at the beginning of the season. The fact that he finished in the top 15 and proved everyone right, he's one of the few guys that actually got a medal out of this. I'm happy for him personally. He proved a lot of people, he proved me wrong. I'm sure he proved you wrong. I think no matter what happened to Super League, he was on house money. To Sanford, he gets away with one, I think. I think there's still things he needs to work on moving forward, but he comes back to a new stage where it'll still be no power play, but you can't unlock the beast. You start giving him a little sniff of it, he'll be there. But your thoughts on this game? It just came down, unfortunately, Lane Super League, Jay. He was fighting from behind except that DJ series, and he did a great job, just one game short at the end of the day.
I think that's kind of the thing also, which is interesting about this format because I mean Lane was coming off a 6-0 victory, a sweep we've never seen before, and then he proceeds to lose this one 5-1. I'm pretty sure, and
No,
now
4-2, 4-2.
4-2, my mistake. Loses this one 4-2, although really 4-1 if we're going to be honest.
Right.
And that's it because he doesn't have enough points to make it out. Technically had a higher game differential than Sanford, but the way it obviously with how these formats go, it's points first. So Sanford able to get 2 victories, one on DJ and then one on Lane to make it out here. I will say I kind of do agree with you that Sanford was able to get away with one, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think he really cares about that because he, in a way, he did redeem himself from last season where he got grouped and it was not even close. So got himself a little redemption here, but he's going to have a tough round of 12 matchup here, and I think with some of the concerns still lingering, it's going to be an uphill battle, but we'll see if he can get the job done because he did the hard part. He got out of the group, and now he's just got to go the rest of the way.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting match. We'll talk about it, but basically JT was on the bye. So your following 6 people are in. It'll be JT up top. He'll be basically the overall leader, right? He had 10 points. And then for Group A, we continue it out with Toaster Guy and Sanford. And then Group B, it was Chai McNam and Ghost. We'll talk about the round 12 preview and predictions a little bit later. But I wanted to go into a new topic today. It says art of the group stage. Well, how did the group stage come about? What really made Super League? I'm going to talk about what is Super League because a lot of people don't know what this is. It's a format that I created in a sense that I wanted to do something different. Right? The original plan, the original plot of this league was we would run 5 regular season tournaments, right? This was back in 2022 when we had that meeting with Fitzy and myself. And 5 regular season tournaments, and whoever won would be the regular season champ and be the league champ. Now, at a certain point last year, I wanted to do something different. I said, well, that's great and all, but I want to do something that really tests the character of people. Because if you just run a 1-0 or 0-1 every week, it just kind of gets boring, right? It's a different. I said, let's create Super League, and then of course along with G and the old disciples, I guess. Sanford, he really was the big disciple of creating the format. You and him. We wanted to do group stage, so we did. The original GS was 10 people get in, no buys, no nothing fancy, right? No buy island, none of that. Just 10 people, and we top 2 get in, and then we would go to the final 4, and then we move on. Now that was great. I thought that was great for the first year. Just some to give the 10 best players a chance. Of course, we never had a full dynamic field, but this year we stepped it up to where we're going to have top 3 advance, right? 16 people in, and it made it a lot more of an enticing format to say, okay, it's not as exclusive. There's a little bit more spots, and you got some more room to play with. The thing is with the art of the group stage, now that we've been through this for 2 times, now we've been the whole 10-week process, 48 games, right? Not 48 games, 24 games. You run 24 games per player. Of course, you got to finish all 6. So we've been through this now for a long time. And the biggest thing I see is even this art of the group stage. I think it still needs tweaks, believe it or not. Because I think there are some things we could still tweak. I know you've been a big proponent of amping the games to 8, right? BO8s. I've been a big proponent that we could use double. We could do a double group stage. I think there still needs to be. There are some things we need to discuss about this. I think overall, if I had to give it a first impression, I thought last year was better because we had more scenarios. It seemed like everyone knew, even though they were rookies, they were ahead of the curve on it. They knew what was going on. This year, you have some timing things. We had D2 champ come over. We had some fill-ins, right? But even then, if you take a look at the results, if you go from the guys that missed it, they missed by 1 point, right? In the case of Brock, he missed by no points. He missed by basically a tiebreaker.
He missed by a game win, pretty much.
Yeah, a game win, right? So I don't think that the problem with the tiebreaker system is the problem. There are discussions of what we can add. Obviously, we could there's probably things we can look into the offseason. I think it's good. I'm going to give it. Last year was a solid A plus, even though it was only 10. I had no complaints at all because it was the first time I was actually very happy with it. We had drama week 4 and 5. In fact, we never had anyone out of it at all. In fact, I don't think anybody was out of it last year at all. But this year, realistically, entering week 5, gee, let's face it, DJ was well gone. And for Brock and Steven, unless they got some miracles, they needed a miracle. Brock I'll give credit, he gave the miracle, but how much of that was a miracle, or was it just Nam saying, okay, let's just experiment, right? If you rack it up again, that's probably only a 3-3, right? Or a 4-2 at most. So I think this year I'm going to have to give it a BG because I think there's still more tweaks we need to look at. The art of the group stage is you have to understand points. You have to understand it's a best of 6. There's the art of you have to worry about draw city. Not draw city in terms of the table, but you got to figure out ways to get draws at the right time and make sure you get enough points. You don't need we've seen it before. I've been a big proponent of this, G, right? Last year, I had 3 ties, but I just needed 1 win. That seems to be the magic number. If you get 6 points, you're probably safe now because there's not enough spots to where, okay, if especially in a bet with the top 3, where you're going to have wiggle room. But with top 2, it wouldn't have been the case, right? Because Toasty and JT would have moved, Sanford would have been out. So there's still a lot to look into about this format. I still give it a pretty solid grade, but I think the players too are understanding a little bit more of how to adapt to this format now. I'm interested to see what happens in year 3, whether it's the same thing or we amp the game numbers or there's more discussions in the off season of where these guys can take it to the next level. Because the guys that made it originally, I think, are going to come back into the fray. They're going to be back next year with the new bot for sure. LBS and another thing, we'll have the new bot for real. But with no power play, it takes a week to figure out, oh, but now I got to readjust my game with no power play. All season, you worry about power play. From round 1 March, where there's 1 power play, to the extent of the final game, right, in March, is 3 power plays. So you go into no power plays. That's a whole different ball game. Your thoughts on the art of the format, G? What have you seen now that you're 2 years into it? Obviously, we both have only played 1. Obviously, you didn't make it this year. I didn't. I was on a bye, which is something we'll talk about down the road. But your thoughts on just the art of the group stage, playing in 1 and then spectating. We both were spectating basically this year. Thoughts on that?
I think obviously we could talk about like pros, negatives with the groups and whatnot. I think one of the biggest emphasis on the groups is the emphasis of winning is important because again, the point distribution is the same as it is in most soccer formats, where it's 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and 0 for a loss. So I think with that being said, the emphasis on winning is very important, and especially because like usually in Uno, you don't have ties in the regular season. That just doesn't happen
Nope.
because it's a bracket and there has to be a winner. In Super League groups, there doesn't have to be a winner. You could just play 6 games, and if it's 3-3, shake hands, move on, take a point each. But I think we've seen, especially throughout this format in the both years, that the wins do so much for you to help bolster your chances of making it out. Because I mean, you look at it here, especially in Group A. So Lane only had 1 loss in the entire groups, while Sanford had 2. But the biggest difference there is Sanford was able to nab 2 victories, while Lane was only able to grab 1 and 2 draws, which ends up not being enough for him to make it out. So getting those victories is still very important. I think that's a good thing with this format here, but it also gives some leeway as well to where if you do take a loss, you can take a second to rebound and move on, especially with it being 4 games in each group. So there is a bit of leeway. So you could be fine with 1 loss. 2 is where you start getting a bit risky there. But yeah, I mean, in terms of how you play it, I think it's varied from season to season because I think last year it was a lot more tight in terms of the battle, but then this year with an extra spot from each group moving on, I think that some people were entering the final week with no stress whatsoever. I mean, you could look at Turner. Turner was pretty much locked in after technically really after week 3, but kind of just put the exclamation point in week 4 to make sure there was no doubt that he was moving anywhere. But in terms of the spectator, it's interesting to follow all the scenarios. In terms of a player, a lot of it comes down to just needing to fight for that win and also getting a little bit worried about how other results could affect your postseason. So it's a bit of a different atmosphere than what the regular season brings, but I think the groups are good and they're definitely something they're going to stay for a while. But in terms what form they will be here is remains to be seen because obviously we could have a lot of tweaks. We did mention a potential move up to best of eights. We did also mention a potential double group stage. None of that's necessarily confirmed, but a lot of things that are getting murmured and discussed of being potential options for either in the future or as early as next season. We'll have to see, but um, I mean, yeah, in terms of the groups, it brings a different energy to the game, and I think for both spectators and players, it brings something new and exciting, and keeps them on their toes. Because I think you have to always adapt because of all the craziness that could happen with it, and yeah, I mean that's about all I got to say on that. I kind of just rambled on for a bit there.
Well, and other common things. If you look at the overall Super League format, there's other things we've discussed, right? We talked about the buys are long. We've also discussed. Someone just said. I remember someone said in the regular season, KT, why haven't we done a group stage? And the reason why we don't do it is look how much time it takes. It takes a while, right? It's not something we can just all right. Let's pop it in, right?
And that's just five. That's
But
just five groups, and that's just two groups of five.
right, it takes a while, right? The scheduling is different. You have to get everyone coordinated with the bye weeks. You have to get coordinated with the scheduling. You have to get coordinated with the graphic department. It's a lot of work. There's a reason why it's a one-time thing. Let's face it this way: if Christmas was every day, would it be special? No, right? It's a one-time thing. It's a once in a lifetime. Well, not once in a
Not
year
one
thing.
that I was about to say. I think you're going a little too far with that one, but
Well,
go on.
well, for some people, it could be once in a lifetime, Clint. But point is, I never made it. But point is, it's a once a year thing to where it's special. It makes it things. Now, I understand people are going to complain about this and that and the over. Now, if we take a look, now we just forget the group stage, right? And the point differential. If you look at the overall format, another thing we're going to try to clean up is this bias. It's clear as day that I've been listen. The last game I played, if I'm not mistaken, was September 8th. I mean, it's been a long time since you see. I've been hosting more than I've been playing, and of course, I'm not going to discuss a lot of the stuff going on with me. I'm just one example. I'm the host, so I got to keep going. Right? There's really no day off for me. But the other guys, Brad, Tago, Ashley, or well, that's not a good example. Ashley at least had the Elite Eight. Who's a good? Oh, Tapir's a great example. He was out round 2 in space, September. There are some considerations there from the overall format. Obviously, D2 does double elimination. And I said in the past, it's not really something I like. But I do see one avenue where it could be in there, and I could see the Final Four being that, because what that could do in the future if we do that, and I've thought about this, and I've discussed a little bit behind the scenes. If we do that in the future, there's actually another league that I want to thank Gon. He runs another league that I told him to do it. What do you call it? Double elimination in the Final Four of one of his test tournaments over there. It's not UUL, it's UUT. I've been just checking that out. It's just he's been giving me data on it, and he says it's pretty effective. You can eliminate a third place game with it, and that's something I'm looking into next year personally. If we do this, run this back, can we do something to where we can eliminate the third place games? Because if we can do a tournament where we can have a little DE in there as a test, I'm open to it, because I think the Final Four, you make it that far, the whole season, you probably have earned some more games. Not just you lost. What if you had a bad night? Or what if you just had a bad night and you got to play and it's late? You get a second chance. I'm starting to understand it and be more open to it for sure, in a small format as a test trial. Now, when I say let's open it up to the four, everything's double. No, it takes forever. But I'm open to that last round, maybe in the future. Best of 8, as we discussed. There's just a lot of rumors going around. We don't have a nailed down format, but the only thing I will say is I think group stage is here to stay forever. I think it's a different, unique format. We talk about you have to adjust to one opponent in the regular season at a time. In the groups, well, you can, if you really do it right, you can study each player before you play. You got four games and a bye, and off that bye week, you think you study the player that you're playing next or the week ahead, right? You can use the data and data reference points to get better at the game. if you look at what we're seeing right now is the guys that are picking week 5 buys, you think there's no chance, but they just both advance. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. It'll be an ever evolving process, not only from a league standpoint, but it was interesting not playing. Of course, I'm still in it, but not playing this here in the format. Now, the last thing I say personally, do I miss it? No, yes and no. It was fun to play for sure, but it's very stressful those last 2 weeks. You got to know what you're doing because you got to understand it's about GD. It's about tiebreakers such as head to head is not the first tie. Points are important. What else is important there? Road wins is a tiebreaker. There's a lot. There's a lot of games without last, but there's a lot of things you have to look into it that makes it more exciting. There's a lot of things that I think will always be interdynamic and ever changing. I think this will stay here in the league because it is the only time of year, G, where it doesn't matter if you're down 5-0. We got to play that last game. Every game matters. In the regular season, in the best of 9, all right, someone got 5-0. That's it. Right? It makes it different. It makes it unique. It makes it a one-time thing where we can all really reminisce about what's going on. Any final thoughts, G, before we move on to round 12?
Uh, no, I think you covered everything I was gonna say, so I think we're ready to move on.
As always, G, I got your back there. Let's get to it, G. Big round 12 coming up. We actually have the nice thing about recording. We have some game times confirmed, so we can kind of run through this. The first confirmed game time will be obviously there is going to be one potentially coming Friday morning, which we'll talk about. Brad versus Ghost. G. Brad had a nice 45-day layoff on the Bye Island versus Ghost, who ironically had a nice 10-day layoff because he picked the week 5 bye. So they both have been well rested. You look at this game and look at two things. Brad has one of those KT Ashley methodical styles. It's definitely got it's a unique style where it's methodical. It's a lot of pace differential. It's not going to be rushing to the finish. It's going to be very, very, very calculated and tactical. Ghost is fast, and he tends to make mistakes, fast plays. However, the thing is, there's no power play, so you don't have to go 4 plays anymore. Until we get power play back, 4 plays don't exist. You can take your time on every move. Because of that, I think Ghost is actually going to have an advantage with no power play. Brad's going to have to take a game to adjust. But because Brad's at home, I know what he does at the end of these series. He'll be more methodical. I'm going to go Brad close to anything. I think Brad wins 4-3, but this is going 7. I think Ghost having a little more experience with no power play will give Brad a little bit of a fade. Right, he'll have to really understand, develop his circumstantial evidence. Game 1, 2, but once he figures that out, I think Brad gets it done and then he'll move on. But in a close one, G, closer than people think. I know a lot of people are saying it's Brad runaway, but I don't see that. I think Brad barely survives here and moves on to play Taga. Thoughts on that?
Uh, it's interesting because I mean both are coming off layovers, but one of them is significantly longer than the other. But I do also kind of want to mention this as well. I mean, looking at the how Space September went. I mean, Brad's Space September was one that was kind of just. I mean, okay, he made it to the round of 16, but that was also a 1-1 record. I came off a very
Yeah,
close
by
loss
Island.
to Captain, but so he has a decent bit of momentum, but he's also kind of been down on himself. So I don't know where the mentality is, but it has been a while since then, and has been locked in and refocused to hopefully pull a run here for Super League. But you also have Ghost, who plays this very unique style and is likely going to be trying to become in swinging. I don't know, going to be might be a bit of a tough one to predict. I think there's a few variables to consider at play here, but uh, I mean, again, I'm just kind of going based off how I felt the most of the season, and I mean, again, this is best of 7, no power play, so not having that being good in that no power play environment is going to be an advantage here. Um, so honestly, when I really think about it, I feel like even though Ghost just came out of the groups here, I think Brad is someone who definitely can work through the games without power play to a good extent. But I do think this is going to be a really close one. I think Brad barely escapes in a 4-3. But I think it's going to be it's going to be one that's either a early alarm for Brad or one that comes down to the wire and shows his grit and determination. I don't know. It'll be one or the other, but we'll have to see what it is if it ends up being that way.
It'll be a good game. It'll come down to, like you said, the fast style of Ghost and that methodical style. It's a true style difference for sure, and it gives a lot of hope. So I guess I will go into the next game. We're going to just kind of go in order here of the sequential order. It is supposedly going to be Chomik versus Toasty, but the problem, gee, that's a 7:30 morning for us, right? Over there is nighttime for those guys. That's the next potential game. It's Friday morning. That's going to be a hell of a time. That is, we have not played a 7:30 game in this league since that Final Four in April Aquatic. We played 8 a.m. This would break a new record where we played so early. We normally don't do this, but with the insane circumstances and time restraints of November, we have to kind of run it with wherever we got. So I'm going to have to stream this one. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how to call this one. This is a tough game. This is split ammo versus a guy that just sticks it to Uno. I'm going to go Chomik here. I think this is a very tough game. It's the true talk. I don't know. This can go either way. Chomik's split ammo style has worked with no power play or with in the regular season, but he's been really good at game flow, and he did use split ammo against Steven. I think that's going to be more of a patience style. Toaster guy, he hasn't changed one bit. He's only evolved a little bit of ammo control, but he'll just stick it to Uno and hope it works sometime. I don't know if that's going to work against split ammo. I'm going to have to go Chomik here 4-3. I think Toaster guy's going to put a good fight, but Chomik will just have enough, and he'll move on to play probably his hardest challenge all season, which will be Ashley coming up. So I'm going to go Chomik here 4-3 in a close one, G. What do you think?
I think this is going to be a bit of a trap game here. I honestly think Toaster Guy is one holding something back that we haven't really seen out of him yet, and I think he's going to just try to break something different. I think he's going to play a more aggressive style here, and we'll have to see how Chomik compares to that. I mean, we've seen in past tournaments where Chomik has kind of just fallen behind early through some aggression and whatnot, and not really able to bring it back. So I think Toaster. I think again, to me this is written as like a trap game. So I honestly think Toaster Guy is going to be the one who comes out of this one 4-2 as the victor. And I mean, again, no power play as well. I mean, Toaster Guy, he's really been able to be someone who has his back against the wall without the power play. He has been able to show that at times. So I do believe, especially with how he did in the groups, I think he has a good chance to pull out the stops here and get the job done for a bit of a slight upset victory seed wise because this would be 9/8, but
Right.
I think the way Toshika is going to approach this game will be a little bit too much for Chomik to handle.
It is going to be an interesting game. No matter if that is the confirmed time, that will be another element to add for sure. Those guys will be pretty juiced up at night, whereas we're going to be, or whoever calls that with me will be more groggy eyed. That'll be fun to watch. So that will be a good classic game. And the last two games, we're going to start up. This is a tough one, too. G, a rematch of Jungle July. Sanford thought he had it back in T4. This is Tapir Sanford. Oh, man. If you would have told me a week ago, I would have this is all Tapir for sure. I was willing to pick him, but you know, there's retirement rumors. Oh, I mean that's hard to believe. I'm sorry, I still can't believe that. But
I mean, nothing's confirmed yet.
nothing confirmed. But this is a tough game to pick. It's a rematch. Sanford has problems with rematches. I'm torn on this one because I remember the winner gets me. It doesn't matter who gets me at this rate, because I have my own stuff. I like to see that match with Sanford for sure. I think it'd be a really good match with me and him. But you know, I've been on the Sanford train all day, but I'm gonna say Tapir gets it done 4-3. It's a tough game, but I want to believe those rumors may have been a mind game, and he's maybe just playing with us a little bit. Maybe he's trying to get into Sanford's head or Lane, I guess, because no matter what, I think it was either going to be Sanford or Lane, unless Lane would have won. So maybe he was trying to play him. I'm gonna go Tapir in an upset, even though it's not an upset. In terms of the seeding, in my heart, it's an upset because you know how much I like Sanford. But there's concerns with him. I think he needs to develop it a little more. I think Tapir's going to come into the ball game and put those retirement rumors aside and get the win 4-3. Close game though, for sure. What do you think?
I think my prediction is going to be a 4-2 Tapir, but I think it really boils down to the fact that rematches have been very much not a strong suit for Sanford this year. I know he was talking about how he knows the style and he's going to come in ready to that game, but I think he said the same thing against Turner in Space September. I mean, look what happened there. And then, I mean, even Super League lost to Turner again, and that made him 0-3 on the season. So
Toasty too. He lost to Toasty 5-1. That's a
Yeah.
rematch. Yeah.
So, and I mean, he made it out of the group through. I mean, never played Curtis, and I mean, he did kind of get redemption against Elaine, but also at the same time, it was a bit of a weird one there. But I don't know. I just think the way this season has been written for Sanford, and I mean, I think the fact that he kind of squeaked out a group escape. I just don't. I just think the writing's on the wall. Obviously, we'll see what happens game time, and I mean, again, I mean, Sanford's been talking about how he could bring in. We'll see what he brings it to the game, or to the table. But I mean, if we're talking about having to make a prediction, I'm sorry, I just have to go Tapir 4-2. I've been more impressed with Tapir throughout the season in general. I mean, Tapir's had low moments for sure, but I think the one thing Tapir's been able to do with those is bounce back. And I mean, if we look at the Space September as well, that was another low moment. So based off the trajectory of the season, he's looking for a bounce back here, and that would start in Super League in this round of 12.
Yeah, it's a tough game to predict. It really is. That's a game that's going to come down to that. Sampras got this very, I wouldn't say methodical. He's got his own unique style. I will always say methodical. There's certain guys that are methodical. He's got his own unique style. Tapir is a definite draw city. He knows how to never rush the finish moment. It's going to be interesting. I think it'll come down to a game 7. Who's got a run at the end? The last game, do
Yeah,
you think no
I
brainer?
do want to say
Yeah.
one thing here because I mentioned this earlier in the show where I'm not a huge fan of the experimenting because of sometimes both what you could lose out on and also some of the consequences of it. And I honestly think this is a prime example of that. But go ahead and introduce the matchup.
JT Nam. JT the merchant with no power play. Nam coming in. Well, I've been Nam and Sanford's big supporters all year, but this is Jesse Turner, and he has looked flawless this entire run with no power. Now, is he going to have problems when we get to power play? That's still to be determined. But with no power play and a best of 7, Nam's going to have to develop a lot more styles. He's got the draw. He's got an Aria. Let's say he's got an Aria style. Now we haven't seen Aria all year. Well, hopefully we should have her back next year. Looking forward to seeing her come back. But because it's the only style that he truly plays, he's trying to do some experiments. I think he will learn some stuff and make this a 4-3. But I think JT wins. It's hard to go against JT, who's basically the house favorite on no power play game. Him and, well, I guess Brock, but Brock he ran out of juice. I think Brock just ran out of juice where JT has had the momentum for the whole year. He had a great season. Brock was just off a miracle running away in T5, and then I think ran out of juice. JT's been going full blast. He's talked about just rubbing his feet or something with the coconut oil massages. Crazy comments from this man, but you can tell he's starting to feel it. I think he's starting to send something big, and I think he will play Cap, which would be an insane game. Him versus Cap. Talk about that if it happens. Low card starts versus probably one of the luckiest players on card starts in the league, and Jace. He gets a lot of card luck, but he also knows what to do with the cards. He's evolved this game. I believe he's the third, tied for the second most wins in the regular season with me. So I think JT's got, I know I've been on that non-train. I think next year's his year, but he's going to take a humble seat. This is if he had played Toaster Guy, I still think it would have been closer, but I think this is the one draw you don't want to get. It's Jesse Turner. Give me JT 4-3. Now we'll evolve, but JT all.
And this is why I had a big problem with the experimenting in that game because there was a situation where this very much could happen, and I mean this is a terrible draw to get. Um, and honestly, I don't really think there's really anyone else to blame but yourself. So now Nam's gonna have to find a way out of this pickle here. This is gonna be a very tough matchup. If there was power play in here, I don't think this would be the worst thing in the world. But there is no power play here, and that is a major red flag when you're going up against Jesse Turner. I still cannot explain why. I think it's a mental thing, but I mean Turner just locks in in a completely different way when there's no power play. And I mean we saw it in the group stage. It was the best performance we've ever seen in the groups. In the 2 years we've ran Super League, no one's ever scored 10 points. Nearly perfect group. But I mean Turner's on a roll here. Nam has been. He's been tracking better, but he's also in the same spot with Sanford where he's on. I'm pretty sure if I'm not mistaken, he's on 2 wins, 2 losses. But no power play. Okay. Apologies, but yeah, I mean, again, Nam's in a similar spot to Sanford where he's on 2 wins but also 2 losses. Again, you could argue the second loss is maybe not going 100%, but again, this is kind of where that causes him to be in this position. I mean, this is going to be rough. And I mean, we've seen how Nom goes against players who are really good at a specific uh, rule set in terms of the season. Because I mean, I remember March, the absolute destruction there. And I think this is another situation where he's going up against probably one of the best in the specific rule set for this round. So I I don't see how he gets that. I think Turner moves on 4-2. Turner's had a great season all around. I think he will continue the season here, and will be really
Oh man,
interesting to see how this quarterfinal goes if he does get there. Because I mean, Turner's really been having one of the sneaky good seasons all around. I mean, I don't really think there was any doubt for him making Super League, and I mean, I don't think there's really any doubt for him topping the group. So overall, been a great season so far for Turner. He's looking to keep it going here in the round of 12 and hoping to make it to the quarterfinals.
it'd be an interesting quarterfinal. We could have well, obviously we split on Cham and Toasty, but if it's Ashley Chamet, that would be interesting. Ashley Toasty would be interesting. Cap JT just sounds like a movie ready to happen on low cards and card luck. That's an insane crack series. No idea on. Oh, it'd actually be Brad Tago. It'd be both so Brad Tago and then myself versus Tapir. That would be a interesting quarterfinal round. We'll see if it happens. A lot of things still to play. Still have yet to see any double bye Islanders. But now that's the last thing I want to talk about. And we had just discussed this, right? We talked about the layoff and well, Jay, basically the equivalent of this is a long 3-day layover at an airport, right? You just got off a 16-hour flight and it's delayed, or just practically you have to stay at a hotel nearby. That's basically what Bye Island is. Now, like I said, for myself, I'm running the damn show. I, I don't have a day off. But the rest of these guys, it's a little bit different where they've been on a long layoff, right? And now you have to adjust back. It is something that we'll take a look into in the off season, but I would say for sure, whatever happens, it'll be a good time. A lot of great players made, and then of course, last thing we forgot to mention the 4 people that didn't make it that missed out. We talked about Steven missing out for sure. That was kind of expected. DJ was kind of expected. Lane was on house money. I'm not surprised he missed out, but I was impressed with him. I think the big one, G. We didn't talk about this a lot, but William Brock missed that. That's a shocker because we all said coming into this thing, William Brock with this format was someone to watch. Do you think that basically, G, my question, the last thing I'll say on the show, do you think Brock ran out of juice? Do you think he just, he had a miracle T5 run? He was winning all those games. Of course, he didn't care about the title finale where he basically said I was locked in, tried to prepare for the next. He didn't use power play. I tried to prepare for the group stage. He kind of knew he was going to get in. But do you think he just ran out of juice, or was it a case of he got outclassed by I don't want to say better players because he did beat Nam, who was a good player, or he did tie a lot. You think he just got outclassed by maybe the old batteries being low, or is there something else in the water there for Brock? We didn't touch on that, but your thoughts on Brock missing? He's the big surprise.
I mean, that was probably the big surprise of all Super League, to be honest. I really don't know what happened. Maybe it's just the return to form from the first 4 tournaments. I mean, he really locked in tournament 5, and I mean, earned his spot from there. But I mean, this was just not the Super League we were expecting, and overall, pretty disappointing showing from him. We'll see what he does next year. Again, I was optimistic on him making the field at the start of the year, and I mean, really cut it down the wire towards the end, but did eventually make the field. But I mean, this is not the Super League a lot of people were expecting. So I think he'll be trying to come back next year with some vengeance and hoping to put together a more full schedule instead of a last second sprint to the finish, because that's kind of like also a very high pressure, tense situation to put yourself into. So we'll see how that goes going forward.
Yep, all those guys except for Steven and who knows what DJ should be moving up a class. We don't know about DJ. Steven will be a rookie. The rest of the guys that made in the top 12, TBD on the classes. Do have some mock classes. We'll talk about that in our episode. Gonna be a fun one to talk about that down the road because, boy, oh boy, the classes next year are gonna be explosive. We'll see how that goes. Well, Jay, I gotta run, I gotta bounce. Want to thank our followers, thank our listeners. Check us out, Apple Pod, Spotify, and of course our home base YT. Gonna be a good one. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Let us know who's gonna win these round 12 matches, and we want to thank all the veterans that were out there serving, of course, our country for the last 250 years, almost 248 years. Appreciate you guys out there, and we're always in our hearts. Thank you guys. Have a great night, and we'll see you back for a little round 12 and quarterfinal preview, and maybe some final 4. Maybe we'll combine that last episode as we start to run down to the sentence of Greece. Here we go. Have a good night.